Tonight on Free Minds TV, we talk about house siting, feeding the homeless, and the city of Boston bans mosh pits. That coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
Welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. It's episode 247, and with you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
We're going to be solving the world's problems tonight, Nick. We're going to be talking about
I don't know about that, but
siding on houses and mosh pits. So some real serious issues to be delving straight into tonight. These are some life changers. You know, I was listening to the news and they're talking about health care and wars and pestilence and measles.
Well,
and
we usually talk about that stuff.
I think that,
but nothing ever changed. I mean, we could almost substitute an episode from a few years ago in for what's
nothing will change. But you know what does matter, Nick? Youth being able to have fun at mosh pits. That's important. Also, what you can put on the side of your house. You know, these day-to-day living. Feeding the homeless. The feedings, as this news report calls it. We'll be getting into those stories tonight.
To use.
Yes, feedings. Covering the important topics tonight, I want to start off with siding issues. This coming from Minnesota, of all places. A Burnsville man was on his way to work when he was arrested and thrown in jail without bond, and then subject to an electronic home monitoring system. But it wasn't for drugs or a DWI or some other major crime. Burnsville city leaders say Mitch Faber's dealings with the law all stem from his failure to properly put up siding on his home. Faber says he had every intention of completing the stucco and decorative rock project on his home, but he ran into money troubles when the economy soured. Burnsville leaders say they had no other choice but to enforce the law. Here's how the simple code violation spiraled into a criminal case. Mitch and his wife, Jean, say it all began way back in 2007 when they received a letter from the city of Burnsville saying in part, quote, "You must complete the siding on your home." "We were in the process of finishing," Mitch insists. "This wasn't something that we were trying to avoid doing. But back in 2009, there were two more warning letters, and another in 2010. The last letter required Faber to appear in court. Burnsville leaders provided 5 eyewitness news." Oh, that's the news story here. 5 eyewitness news. Some of the reports from the court. And then it gets into some boring stuff. We'll skip ahead to, quote, "I was expecting maybe a $700 fine," Faber said, "but instead I was given an ultimatum. Finish the siding or go to jail." So he had no other choice. He dug down deep. Gene says he spent about $12,000 putting up stucco facade over the plywood exterior. Well, that is ugly. It's plywood exterior for, we're going on 4 years here. Okay. But he spent $12,000, put on the stucco, and they thought they were in compliance. All's well, right? Nah, not so fast. Faber was taken into custody in November of 2011 after Barnesville's inspectors ruled that the work was not satisfactorily completed. A warrant for his arrest had been issued when, according to the city, Faber failed to turn himself in because his house was still not up to code. Faber is adamant it was. Regardless, what came next, he says, was absolutely uncalled for and humiliating. "I'm walking around in a green and white jumpsuit. I had to shower in front of the sheriff. I was shackled. My wrists were handcuffed to my waist for siding." It was insane, said Gene. Absolutely insane. After 2 days of being locked up, a judge agreed Mitch should be released, but required him to submit to an electronic home monitoring system. In Dakota County, the process requires participants, no matter what their crimes, to blow into a drug and alcohol device every time an alarm goes off. "They call me at 2 in the morning. Blah, 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 blah. It goes into this whole dealings about how 5 eyewitness news complained to the Dakota County about this whole situation. And Dakota County says, well, what are we supposed to do? The county attorney is a private contractor hired by the town. And then the judge, while he does sit in the county of Dakota, is hired by the state of Minnesota. So it's out of the Dakota County's hands. Okay. So I just saved a whole page of reading. The blah, 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 blah. Getting to the end here. Most importantly, says the Fabers, they made a mockery of an otherwise law-abiding man. Asked Mitch, what did you accomplish other than wasting the city's money, the county's money, our money, and then all the mental and emotional anguish? What did you accomplish? Nick, what did they accomplish?
Well, I mean, I suppose they're trying to enforce the building codes, and if you're going to put them in place, I guess you're going to enforce them at some point.
I have heard that. If you're going to have a law, let's enforce it. So, like, jaywalking is against the law?
Yes.
Well, if you jaywalk, you're given a ticket, you don't pay the ticket, you go to jail.
In some places, that is the case. I know here in Keene, that's probably not likely to happen.
No.
I don't know anybody who's ever been cited for jaywalking. But, that's the thing. And the problem I have, I mean, some people might say, well, you shouldn't have plywood siding. And I would agree, generally, that's kind of ugly. But, I mean, when you get into building codes, essentially what you're saying is that the city planning board, not even the people in the city, the argument is made that, oh, well, the community will set standards. But frankly, that's not the way it works. People who are interested in running for planning board and who, have the right personality type to get elected to local office are going to be the ones who make that determination. And in my experience, Toby, people on city councils, planning boards, at least in small towns, sometimes they are just regular people who are members of the community. There seems to be a selection bias for busybodies and just, typically I don't think the city council in many towns around here where I've had a chance to actually look at the people on the council, then look at the community, it doesn't really represent the community at all. Well, so you're letting some busybodies decide what you can do with your house.
Well, isn't that true of any form of so-called representative government? It's not actually representing the majority of people because the majority of people are lower class, maybe some lower middle class individuals who are out working. They don't have time to set up a campaign and run for office and go to meetings. They're going to be out working, or they have no desire and they're just going to stay home and not work and watch TV. I mean, it's the people who are typically more wealthy, and then they have a personality that drives them towards running other people's lives. I mean, let's face it, it is a personality complex, and that's why many people say we'll never have leaders, especially in higher offices, that actually represent people and actually make good decisions, because any guy that you would want to be president, well, by virtue of the personality of you wanting him to be president, he would never even run for that office. And if he did run, he would never make it to the top because he wouldn't jump through the hoops and do the back scratching and all the dirty stuff you need to do to actually get elected.
Yeah, my issue with, people are big on zoning codes, a lot of people are, and planning issues and code issues. And when you run into things like what kind of siding you can use, what kind of construction materials you can use. Frankly, if I was a dictator, I would be pretty severe. I mean, I would probably, if you were going to make me a dictator and I didn't have philosophical reservations about doing it, I would say standing seam metal roofs are the only thing you can use.
Well, then you should move into a private community, Nick.
No, but my point is that if you're going to hand that authority over to people in government, they're not just going to stop with, does it not, make it not look crappy. And there are plenty of communities, Boulder, Colorado, some people would call it a progressive building code about energy efficiency and sustainability. And in that context, it is. It's also a pretty draconian building code. It's not just national building codes and fire codes and electrical code you need to keep up with, but they have a green point system, which is pretty onerous if you want to build anything over a couple thousand square feet. So where does it end?
Well,
and in some places in the country, there are planning requirements that extend to what kind of flooring you can put in your home. It does not just what about you can see from the street.
Yeah.
And philosophically, if you're going to say the government can tell you what your house should look like or what you should build it out of, why not?
Sure. Well, it's a slippery slope. Once you're on it, you're going to give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and just keep going, keep going. The logical progression is, yes, we need all these houses to look good because, well, the way you keep your home affects the value of my home, et cetera, et cetera. So where does it end?
Yeah, I've never heard a very good historical case made for this because, I mean, I've heard people locally on the radio, when there's an opportunity to call in on open line shows, talk about how if we didn't have a building code here in the city of Keene, New Hampshire, people would be killing their neighbors to settle their disputes when they didn't like how their neighbor's house looked, which is ridiculous because when you consider the fact that much of the city was built before building codes, we're talking 100 years ago or more, there weren't codes. And people seem to put together well-constructed houses that are still around, at least the ones that are around now lasted this long. And I don't know how big of a problem it was, Toby. People somehow managed to survive and to have a functioning community in the absence of these kinds of zoning codes. And there are still major metro areas like Houston that don't have these kinds of codes. So, I mean, when you make an argument and say they're absolutely necessary, society will fall apart, that's not really the case. The argument you can make is we in the city like to be able to tell people, what their houses should look like. Now we're having an honest debate.
Sure. All right. Well, we can't get stuck on building codes forever. Let's turn to some more important issues. Mosh pits. Now, I know that this was a big part of my life growing up as a teenager. We're going to concerts and getting in mosh pits and having fun with this kind of dance. But the old cronies don't like it so much.
No. Well, I mean, the city of Boston doesn't. I'm not even sure it's a generational thing.
I think it is. I don't think it's young 20-year-olds on the passing these rules, Nick. But
no. Boston has long been known for its underground punk scene where bands and fans engaged in a high-energy music experience. This may be about to change. Police have cracked down on mosh pits. Slam or mosh pits take place usually in front of the stage. Usually it's a circle formed by bodies. People make a ring and then you bounce around off of each other and bump into each other and throw your arms around and kick and jump and all kinds of things.
Do all sorts of insane,
and
crazy, stupid stuff.
People get hurt, let's be honest. I mean, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time in mosh pits.
Oh, yeah.
People get hurt.
But
there's codes to them. You pick people up.
Yeah, you pick people up. There's nice mosh pits and there's mean mosh pits. And if you
usually know what you're stepping into,
right,
because if it's a mean one, people are swinging fists and faces are getting bloodied.
You're like, okay, that's a mosh pit that's for me or not for me.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go, at this stage of my life, I wouldn't go into them anymore.
Oh, no, I'm all set with mosh pits now. I'm just saying that at one point in life, if someone had told me no mosh pits, which they did, I remember we used to have punk rock shows here in Keene at the community kitchen, and they shut us down because of mosh pits. They said it was insurance reasons. And it was very upsetting, because every time they told us to stop, you're going to shut it down, and we wouldn't stop. We didn't listen to them. That's why they shut us down eventually.
Part of this is, regardless of what the rules say, I mean, if you're talking about...
It's part of rebellion and being a young person.
It's not, if there's not rebellion, and that's the thing that really gets to me, is a lot of these new punks, they really just aren't into the rebellion thing, not genuinely.
Music is part of rebellion in yourself, though.
What is that? No, I'm talking about real rebellion. And
you're talking about the real punk rock you grew up with.
I'm talking, look, I don't know. Something happened to the ethos there, and now it's just about
this
music.
Is what it is, Nick. When you're about 14 years old, emotionally, you're very susceptible to the music that you're listening to. And after you go through puberty, that's the music that is the end-all, be-all of music, whatever you were listening to as you were going through puberty. Nowadays, then everything else stinks afterwards.
Anymore. They're not even breaking the rules.
What rules did he break?
They're breaking the rules.
Mosh pits.
But the mosh pits, well, they were within the rules back then, or at least
See, they're going to be breaking rules, Nick.
Well,
just like
you're assuming there will actually be mosh pits, and they're not going to shut them down. They've come down on... I've seen things change a lot.
We did lose the community kitchen shows.
Yeah, I've seen things change a lot. And some of these venues over the last few years with other rules. They point out here that... police recently cited a club for allowing violent mosh pit dancing and vowed a crackdown on what they call dangerous behavior and a public safety hazard. Boston Herald reports that police cited the House of Blues for a license violation because of a mosh pit that broke out on during a February 21st show by Flogging Molly. Now, coincidentally, Toby, it wasn't called the House of Blues back then. Same venue. But back when it was the Avalon, this was probably 6 years ago. More than that. It wasn't 18. Well, thereabouts. 7 years ago. I went into a mosh pit there during a Flogging Molly concert, and it wasn't a particularly violent mosh pit, but somebody was, dancing around moshing, and they nailed my nose with their elbow. It wasn't even that hard, but it was enough to give me a bloody nose all down the front of my shirt. I can tell you that at the, what was it? Was it the Tweeter Center? I know I still have a chipped tooth from one of the Ozfests that I went to one year. That hurt, and my elbow hurt for about 6 months after that because I landed on it.
So, see, don't you wish that mosh pits have been banned and you wouldn't have to go through
Not
this
really.
pain and suffering?
I entered at my own risk. Didn't get too terribly hurt. It's not, I think there is some risk to going in there. But no, I think people should be able to do that if they want to. And this is a big reason. I mean, people aren't dropping, some of these shows aren't cheap. You're talking $50 to $100 a ticket. And people are going there.
Getting to the front, I've spent $200 on a ticket before to get where the mosh pit's at.
Yeah, and that's what people go for. I mean, people aren't spending $200. I can listen to their...
To get to the mosh pit, that's like a select, unless it's a smaller show, but to get into the big shows, to get to where the mosh pit are, you're paying hundreds of dollars for a ticket sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the reason why people are going. You can listen to the bands. If you just want to listen to the music, you can do it for a lot less money at home. Buy the CD or... Heck, a lot of people out there just pirate the music so they don't pay anything for it anyway. Let's be honest about it. I'm not saying you should, but that's what a lot of people do. So you can listen to it at no or virtually no cost. They're going for an experience. And with probably one exception, which wasn't so much a mosh pit, but it was splitting the crowd, and then the crowd ran into each other. And I saw some people get pretty badly hurt. I mean, that was...
It's like Red Rover.
It's like Red Rover, but...
I remember when they banned that at recess, too.
But with, like... ranks 20 or 30 feet deep. So I didn't do that. I actually moved away from that whole thing. But with the exception of that, which was, I mean, I think some people may have gotten caught up in that didn't really want to. It may have gotten pretty badly hurt. With the exception of that, I don't see a problem with this. It's not a public safety issue. People enter at their own risk. Frankly, I don't think there are that many people who get terribly injured. There are risks involved, but you might get bruised, you might get a little bit bloodied, you might get bumped around. And a lot of people who go in don't get injured at all.
So, Nick, first, they go after dueling. Then they go
that's
after hand-to-hand combat. Then they're going after mosh pits. Yeah. Where does it end, Nick? Where is it end?
I don't know where it ends.
Arm wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, that is, to be honest, it's here. The way you said it made it sound a little bit ridiculous, but that's... Why not ban arm wrestling? You can actually hurt yourself arm wrestling if you strain too hard. A friendly wrestling match? I don't know. I don't know where it ends, Toby. I just know that I don't like this. Wherever we are now, at least in the city of Boston, it's a little bit too far. That's the whole, that's what, to me, was a little bit special about the Boston music scene. It was an underground punk scene, and it was
Flogging Molly. There's the Dropkick Murphys. How can you go to a Dropkick Murphys concert and not have a mosh pit?
I don't know.
It just seems wrong.
It does seem messed up to me, and this is, I'm not saying there are no risks involved, but this is one of those things where it is the government trying to tell you what decisions you can make, telling you can't take your own risks.
See, this is the thing. I'm surprised it's not the insurance companies, because that's what it was at the community kitchen. It was insurance companies. It wasn't the police that shut us down. It was the people renting it out to us said, well, if someone gets hurt, we're going to get sued. I'm surprised it's not the insurance companies. So if it's not the insurance companies, who cares? Someone gets hurt, they're covered. They entered at their own risk. I don't get it. Who are the people making these decisions?
Yeah, by and large, I don't think people who get injured in mosh pits sue. It certainly never crossed my mind.
Because they entered at their own risk, and as you said, you were telling me that you saved that shirt that had the blood on it because it was it's like a souvenir from your old concert days.
Exactly. I don't know.
Every time you bite into an apple, you remember fondly getting hit in the face in that mosh pit.
My tooth I didn't get hit. The tooth thing is from falling down and my jaw actually clacked together. It was my own teeth that did the damage. But I don't know. I don't know what. I really don't get it. I think the issue with the insurance, Toby, is that the risk, even the risk of being sued by people, and I'm sure it happens sometimes, but to the venue owner, they're willing. I'm sure the insurance rates for these venues are high because people do get injured. I'm sure a certain percentage of them sue. They shouldn't. If they enter the pit willingly, that's their problem. But I think the issue is that this is a big enough part of the concert experience that the venues are willing, the insurers are willing to insure them because they obviously don't get sued enough for it to be that much of an issue. And the venue is willing to pay higher prices, and that only gets passed on to people who go to concerts at that venue. So it's really not something that affects the city. It's really not something that hurts the insurance companies because they'll charge higher premiums if the loss history is high. And if the venue's not going to crack down on it because they're willing to pay the higher premiums, the only person who has a problem with this is the city of Boston. And I never saw the city of Boston get into a mosh pit.
Now, I know that we seem silly for talking about this, but breaking down what we're talking about is illegal. Is the government is telling people that they are not allowed to go listen to music, people playing music, and bump into each other while it happens. That's what we're talking about. That is illegal. Yeah, maybe I'm crazy for thinking that shouldn't be illegal. I don't know, Nick. I don't know what to say anymore. To me, that just seems so... Like, why is there's enough problems in the world and the government's focusing in on people bumping into each other and having a good time? Whatever.
Well, but dancing has been a target of bans for a long time. It didn't used to be, safety reasons that were cited. It used to be that dancing itself was immoral and perverse, and it would lead to people having sex and things like that.
This is not sexy dancing.
And, that goes all the way back to the Calvinists in Geneva. And, there's a long history of banning dancing. And this is just, I think that the new, I don't know, the new thing that you cite when you want to crack down on the behavior isn't moral considerations anymore. Now you just say it's health and safety. But this is not something that's an externality. It's not affecting you if you don't go into a mosh pit. You're just trying to ruin someone's good time because you don't like their behavior. You don't base it on moralism anymore. Now you just base it on being a sissy.
All right. Well, there are some things, Nick, that affect many people. They affect everybody who has to look at them. Mosh pits generally take place in a private venue where people pay a ticket. But something that takes place right out in the middle of the public where everybody can see are feedings, Nick. Feedings of homeless people. And there's one mayor in Philadelphia who wants to put an end to this. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it really is how this is put. It's not very nice. I don't want to laugh at the homeless being hungry. But look, the government here is saying that they want to make it illegal because they don't want to look at them.
Well, that's not explicitly what they said.
But that's what they said.
That's what they mean.
All right, let's get into their quotes and we'll see what they're saying. Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter has announced a ban on feeding large numbers of homeless and hungry people at sites near the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. Mayor Nutter is imposing the ban on all outdoor feedings of large numbers of people on city parkland, including Love Park and Ben Franklin Parkway, where it is not uncommon for outreach groups to offer free food. Nutter says the feedings lack sanitary conditions and dignity. Note that, they lack dignity. Telling them they can't eat, that's dignity. Quote, providing to those who are hungry must not be about opening a car trunk, handing out a bunch of sandwiches, and then driving off into the dark and rainy night, Nutter said. What the heck is he talking about there? The city's leading homeless advocate, Project Homer's sisters Mary Scullion, voiced tentative support for the mayor's announcement. She said the mayor is between a rock and a hard place on the issue of outdoor feedings. How could they call them outdoor feedings? It just seems so like... Anyways... Quote, I really want to thank the mayor for his courage. This is not an easy position, but I do think it's a great opportunity for his courage.
He's certainly going to lose the homeless vote.
Yeah.
I mean that's I don't think there's much courage in this position. I think there's a lot of not wanting to look at homeless people because you think they're smelly.
That's where I'm thinking he's going on.
It's just unsightly to have these people around, and why don't they just die or go somewhere else?
Well,
that's the attitude. I mean, that's basically the attitude. And this isn't the first story.
We've read hundreds of them.
Why do these people have to ruin
tens of stories like this? The fact that the city of Philadelphia is saying now that the homeless don't have the right to eat on Ben Franklin Parkway or eat around the center city is a clear violation of civil rights, said Jenkins, one of the ministry groups. It says that people that have can eat. in in all places, and people who do not have cannot eat in certain places. Nutter's aides will work on with homeless groups to encourage more indoor feedings. So that right there is just saying, yeah, we don't want to see the feedings.
The issue isn't whether or not you're feeding the homeless. The issue isn't even so much the oversight for sanitation reasons.
No.
The issue is you did not put a wall around these people so they're not visible to me.
Right, exactly. And that's what's sick. And so when I was laughing at it was like because it's so sad of what these elected officials are doing here. They are saying homeless people cannot eat because I don't want to see them.
Yeah, and
I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see them. They depress me for whatever reasons. I don't want to see all the hungry people. So let's get rid of them in public view. Put up a wall around them, then you can feed them, but not where I can see them.
Yeah, and I know you've raised the question, Toby, about in a time when we're cutting a lot of government assistance programs, especially for society's most vulnerable. They're not really cutting the Department of Defense budget. They're not really cutting most of the budgets out there. But at least on a state level, the biggest cuts have been in health and human services programs. And there's certainly, there are areas of waste in those too, but they're providing services to people who really don't have a whole lot of other options, as opposed to, providing lucrative contracts to aerospace firms and other less savory practices.
Bringing in Lenko Bear cat vehicles to towns like the city of Keene.
Right, and farm subsidies for big corporate firms.
Yeah.
But homeless people don't have a lot of political clout. Their programs, a lot of times these are people who have substance abuse issues, or they have or substance abuse issues and underlying mental health issues. Usually there's a reason why people end up being homeless for a prolonged period of time. And we're still in an economic downturn. A lot of people jobless. It's a lot more easy to lose your house, lose your livelihood, and this is what people are trying to do. I mean, that was one of the questions we've raised before: is what are some of the answers that the private sector can provide? And what we're dealing with here are private charities, church organizations, and outreach groups, and they're trying to just provide a very basic service. Doesn't really solve the problem, but they're trying to at least give hungry people something to eat, which is, serving a pretty immediate need.
Yeah, man, what's so wrong with opening up? The
city wants to shut it down, not for safety reasons, really just for unsightliness, and maybe if we don't feed the homeless people, they'll go away, like cats.
What's wrong with opening up a trunk and giving away sandwiches to hungry people?
Even if I do open up a trunk and give homeless people sandwiches and then drive off into the dark and rainy night, on which I apparently chose to drive to the park to distribute ham sandwiches to hobos.
It sounds like a nice thing to do.
I don't know why. It sounds like the homeless guy's better off, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what are his options?
No sandwich.
Yeah, the garbage can. I mean, literally, that is what a lot of people who are living on the street do. That's literally the option here, is eat the donated food or just go to the back of a restaurant that's thrown out the food because it's out of date or somebody's already eaten half of it and eat it out of the trash can.
Well, that's the mayor's solution. We're out of time this week. Until next week, it's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a good week.